Welcome, everyone. I'm Stephen Garvey. I'm here with Greg Burke.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, and he's a financial professional and member of the NCA, and we're going to be trying to bring everyone up to speed just on taxation, the extreme taxation in Canada, and how it's making our lives intolerable here in Canada. And we have a short video we're going to play just as an introduction, everyone. So we encourage everyone to watch this video, and then we're going to go into the discussion.
So I just want to describe this video before
Sure.
you play it.
Go ahead.
It comes from the Taxpayers Association, who survives mainly on donations from Canadians, and they're a lobby group that are continually 24/7 lobbying against the government and their high taxes, and trying to get our debt down and try to get our taxes down. So they made this video. It's the first time I've been a member of the Taxpayer Association for the last 15 years, and it's the first time I've seen comedy come out of the Taxpayer Association. And this video, because it's comedy, it really sets the tone, and it helps people understand how serious our tax issues are. Why is this heart coming up? Has that got to do with my heart?
It was just a mistake, and I was giving you, I was just giving you some love.
All right. So play the video,
Yeah.
and you'll see in the end. And this really ties into what you and I have been talking about, Stephen. That Canadians.
To get some beer. And why would you buy your beer in the States? Cause the taxes are out of sight. So their beer's about half the price. Half price? That's why I'm driving to the USA tonight. You're drinking American beer now? Oh no, I only drink Canadian beer. I just can't afford to buy it here. The border is the final frontier. We're buying beer tonight. Well, you might have to come pick me up then too. We'll grab your beaver tail hat and get your tail in my truck. Well, you know I don't like driving out of my way, but I drink hops and barley almost every day. I keep my mind on my money on my mind, but my mind's on beer almost all of the time. I've been working all week for my minimum wage, and that's $15, but it don't buy a cake. Cause when my wage went up, the price of brewed did too, and it was already higher than my homeboys do. So I load up my Chevy with a few good men and do a weekly beer run down to Michigan. I say, excuse me, ma'am, I ain't from around here, but I'm awfully damn thirsty. Could you buy me a beer? She said, I certainly can, and as a matter of fact, we got Canadian brands with damn near none of the tax. Cause it's a cold hard fact, I'm living pay to pay. This redneck buys all his beer from the US of A. Oh, you ain't gonna like this. What's that? They got a new charge on beer. Oh yeah, the escalator tax. Well, I didn't go to school, I didn't study no Socrates, but I got money on a certain philosophy. No economics, but I got a hypothesis. If there's no competition, then you got a monopoly. I meet my pops for a weekly pop, and we talk about shop or whatever the topic be. Pay a top dollar for a lotto or three, and we try to buy local, but the prices are steep. He said, son, I know a place a couple hours away. It's called the land of the free and the home of the brave. And would you know it, to my surprise, beer from my hometown, a beer for half of the price. Couldn't believe my eyes, how could this be true? I feel like I'll be someone next to a government screw. After the hydro's paid, the rent's gonna be late, so I'll cross the Great Lake and buy my beer in the States. I question legality on government from monopoly. It seems the launch is a mockery when it comes to beer. And oh yeah, weed too. It doesn't matter if you're left or right. Our taxes are still out of sight. That's why I'm driving to the US of A tonight. That's where I get my beer. and my spirits, and my cigarettes, and my gas, and my groceries, and my tires, my oil changes, my laptops, my TVs, most plane flights, my sparklers, my fidget toys, my condoms, any kind of snacks and chocolate bars, pepperettes. Did I say pepperette? Most of my ammunition, my kettle corn, my pillows, especially my pillows, that guy from Wisconsin, my slap chop, all my good tapes and adhesives, my clothes, all my movie posters, all my wife's Christmas present, paint, saran wrap, and garbage bags, my running shoes, my work boots, all my hair product, bubble gum, magazines, pretty much everything. Are you done yet?
Yeah, and that pretty well sums it up. And that's what's happening in Canada, that people that live close to the border, they do their shopping on the other side of the border because we're too heavily taxed. For an example, a $25 shirt in the United States, the time it gets to Canada, it's more like $65 because of the tariffs that the Canadian government puts on, the excise taxes and tariffs they put on clothes or any kind of vitamin that's coming over from the United States. So the government is this government here is just draining the people, and it's like you and I have agreed to. It's slavery. High taxes are slavery.
Yeah, it's a form of slavery, everyone, and we don't want to wreck your long weekend, but it's still some.
Yes,
well,
we do.
I don't myself, but we want everyone to consider what's going on. It doesn't, the silver lining, Greg. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, everyone. No. And that's what makes it even worse.
Way too much waste.
Yes.
That's why we have high taxes. There's too much government waste. There's too much government bureaucracy. Too many government departments that are doing absolutely nothing. And everybody knows it, but they do nothing about it. It's like you said, Stephen, they continue on voting globalist governments in that are just the same old, same old.
Yeah, and that's what's happening, everyone. So we went through some numbers last week, and the average taxation, income tax, and Greg, you think it's for Alberta was 43.6%. So
that's 44 in Ontario.
Yeah, 44 in Ontario. That's only and income 45. Tax. That's total income tax.
Yeah, and it's 45% in Nova Scotia.
All right, and
but a lot of people don't understand the tax system. We're in a triple tier tax system here in Canada, and I watched a video last week on Elizabeth Smith McCrossan. She's running for the leadership for the Conservative Party in Nova Scotia, and she in her video said that she has a friend, or her son has a friend who worked 6 months in Nova Scotia, 6 months in Ontario, and at the end of the year he made $60,000. And because he worked 6 months in Nova Scotia and 6 months in Ontario, he has a choice which province he's going to file his taxes. So when he did the comparison, it turned out if he filed in Ontario, he would have gotten a refund of $3,200. But if he filed in Nova Scotia, he would have had to pay, I think, $1,100 or $1,900. And the difference is a lot of people don't understand, and Canadians really have to educate themselves of what's going on in this country, because as I mentioned before, CPAC, after they did a study, there's only 3% of voters that really know what's going on in the country. So the other voters are depending on what the media tells them how to vote. So don't become a zombie of the media. Educate yourself, because here in Nova Scotia, the provincial taxes, you're taxed at the highest tax bracket at $60,000. So once you reach $60,000, you're going to go into the highest tax bracket. But in Alberta, you don't hit the highest or Ontario, you don't hit the highest tax bracket until you reach $75,000. So that's a huge saving, and there's a huge gap. So that's why if he had filed in Nova Scotia, he'd have to pay $1,100, and the difference being in Ontario would have been, and it would have been better if he had filed in Alberta.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted looking at the big picture, Greg, and you were saying the total taxation, everyone, on Canadians, and this is an estimate. It's it's pretty close to what it is. It's for every $100 in your sweat, hard sweat work. The governments overall take $89.
Yeah, just on income tax alone, We
No,
don't become tax-free until August. Just
exactly.
income tax.
Exactly.
But 12 months of the year, every level of government, including the federal, are still continue taking taxes, like the GST that we're going to talk about tonight. And the GST, I'll just give a little bit of history with the GST. Brian Mulroney took a trip to New Zealand on our tax dollars, and he came back with a brainwave of what he told Canadians. And of course, you never believe anything that comes out of a politician's mouth if they say this is going to be better for the Canadian taxpayer. It's an automatic lie. So in this case here, he said New Zealand has a GST tax, or HST, whatever it was, and he said it helped them get out of debt. But what he didn't tell the Canadian people was they didn't have any other tax. They had a flat tax, and their registered tax was that GST. So what happened in this country is he sold it, and he hired his cronies to go to every province, every premier or former premier, to go to every province and try to sell it. And I don't know if they got paid to accept it. It's beyond me why any politician would already take a 7% tax and put it on top of already a 12% tax. So you're already at a 19% tax. So here in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and PEI and all, what that tax did is it increased inflation. Now Trudeau back in the 70s increased inflation to 19%, and this is why things are so expensive here in Canada today. But Brian Mulroney added that inflation by bringing in the GST. Now the purpose of the GST is what he sold Canadians, is it was going to help pay the debt down. Now once you give a politician money, they're never going to give it up. So that's all the GST has done, is it caused inflation to rise because it's on everything, including school supplies for children and on food. Like, what country would tax already on top of tax? And Pierre Trudeau or Justin Trudeau, we see him coming with the carbon tax. Well, the carbon tax is just another GST tax. And once you allow a government to put these taxes on you, it's here for good until you get a government in that will get rid of it. Now, we know Chrétien twice ran with he's going to get rid of it. Well, of course, every Canadian knew how devastating GST was in the 90s. So they voted for him hoping he'd get rid of it, but he never did. Because what it does, and what it's doing today, is it feeds their social programs to buy votes. And that's all the GST is doing, and you and I are paying for political socialism.
Yeah, isn't that disgusting, everyone? And the mistake Harper made, Greg, he lowered GST down to 5%. But under Harper, the bureaucracy in Ottawa actually grew.
Yeah, and he did no different.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If Harper was really a capitalist-style government, as he proclaimed to say, he would have gotten rid of the GST.
Yes.
He's smart enough. He's an economist. He's smart enough to know how devastating that is to Canadian families. We have people living below the poverty line in Canada paying GST already on top of 12% cash register taxes.
Unbelievable. And another thing, the GST, how they justify it? It's unbelievable, everyone, online. How these cronies in Ottawa justify it, Greg? They're saying it's encouraging Canadians to be frugal. But you just told me the data on debt, household debt.
Yeah, the household debt is on gross income is 150% in Canada right now. Jim Flaherty saw that when he did a study on the debt of Canadian families, and a lot of families, what they were doing at that time, were getting lines of credit on their mortgages. They were getting rid of the conventional mortgages, and Jim Flaherty saw the danger in people borrowing money and overseeing their debt, because when you get a line of credit, if your house is somewhat paid for and you get a line of credit, then of course you can buy a car and whatever with it, or renovate or buy another house or whatever. But what he saw was Canadians, and I read these aren't made up numbers. I read the numbers that came from the financial institution, that Canadians are 150% over and above their gross income. And the average Canadian, and I'm going to talk about credit cards here, how dangerous they are. The average Canadian carries an average debt of $10,000 on a credit card. Now, I'm going to put this in perspective. Harvard did a study on credit cards in 1992. Or sorry, it wasn't 92, it was 97. And what they asked was graduates who have been at a university for more than 2 years, they asked 100 of them into the study. And students that had a debt of $1,500. Now, we're not talking a lot of money, but $1,500 on the credit card. So it was a 10-year study, and 10 years later, they followed the study, and the average individual still carried a $1,500 balance. Now, if you take that $1,500 balance and add it into, at that time, the interest rate on the credit card was 18%. And if you take that 18% on $1,500, not $15,000, so I want to clarify here, it's only $1,500. If you punch in the numbers of compounded interest, which credit card debt is, it's compounded, interest on top of interest on top of interest, for those who don't understand what compound interest is. At age 65, what do you think in interest alone on $1,500, on interest alone from age 25 to age 65, that individual with a $1,500 debt has paid in interest alone?
Oh my God!
What do you think?
And that's with no adding on to it. It's just static 1,500.
1,500. Yeah.
And what's the rate? What's the interest rate on it?
18%.
18%?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Because once you don't pay your credit card off.
Yeah, so that's going to be what?
18%.
40, 50, 60,000?
$325,000.
325. Oh my God!
In interest alone.
Right.
And for the viewers that don't believe me, they can go to a calculator, a compounded interest calculator, financial calculator, McKinsey calculator is one that you could use, and you punch in your 18%. Because what a lot of people don't understand is if you don't pay your credit card off at the end of the month, if you go to Starbucks and buy a $3 latte, that immediately starts to compound interest. So you could pay your minimum payment, or you can pay, if you owed $1,500, if you paid $1,400, you still haven't paid off your credit card. So the interest that accumulated over time is still compounding when you buy a new.
What do you mean by compound for people who don't know?
Well, compound is if you bought something for $1 and it's a 5% interest on there, then it'll compound every day, and they'll calculate the 5% again the very next day on that same item.
So what they're doing is
so compounded interest in simple terms can go from 5%, and because of the compounding, like in mortgages and conventional mortgages, you could end up paying 100 and 150% on interest alone.
So what it is, everyone, the first day 5%, let's say you get $5 on a dollar, 5 cents on a dollar the first day. The second day they're actually doing 5% on $1.05. Right, Greg?
Yeah.
And then
so what?
And so that comes out to what? That could be 7 cents. So the third day you're at you would be at $1.12. So then you do another 5%, and you see the compound, everyone.
Yeah. So the average Canadian's carrying a debt of $10,000 on their credit card. So when you look at their debt of 157% over and above their gross income, and they're carrying a credit card of $10,000, there's a red flag to me that flies up, and it says that people aren't living above their means. What is happening is because they're so heavily taxed by the Canadian governments that they have to force themselves into debt. Now, that's exactly what governments want. They want you in debt because they can control you, and they can lie to you with the simplest lies that you're going to fall for. When John Crescian came out and said, "I'll get rid of the HST," people went to the voting booth in droves, believing that, oh my God, this guy might save us. But what he did with him and Paul Martin, that's all they did is they put more debt on people with more taxes.
Exactly, and same with Rooney. It skyrocketed. under Mulroney.
Oh yeah, Mulroney was a disaster.
Yeah. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
So can you talk about? I said there, $100 of income a Canadian earns, and we calculated that it's around $89 in tax. Everyone, so that means you only have $11 disposable income. Greg?
Yeah. So
is that correct?
Yeah. So that's the numbers we ran a few years ago.
Okay.
I don't know what we haven't run the numbers since, but
they must be close, right?
Well, if you add up all the taxes, your property taxes, the liquor store taxes, the gas taxes, heating taxes, did I say property taxes?
Yes.
Environmental
carbon
taxes,
tax,
tire taxes. Well, let's forget about the carbon because that's
battery
not there.
tax.
Yeah, all of
tax.
the taxes, bottle tax. When you combine all of that, that's coming off your net. So, for an example, somebody who earns $80,000 a year, which is an average income today, and I feel bad for anybody any household that's bringing in less. But just to speak on that, the average household today, in order to bring up 2 children, has to gross $125,000 a year in order to net the amount of money that it needs to bring up 2 children. And that's excluding their university. So, for an example, to bring a child up from day 1 to age 17 prior to university, it costs $725,000. That's one child over their lifetime of 17. And that's, including clothes, food, all of that combined. So what's happening here in this country is governments have almost turned our country into a feudal system with corporate welfare and socialism, and they're doing it on our dollars. They're doing it on our tax dollars. And they're forcing Canadians to be in debt. We live in a very rich country, and although things are expensive, if we didn't have to pay the taxes, the amount of taxes that we are paying, we could live a lot better. I mean, it'd be a much better country to live in. But when you see governments bringing in migrants and putting them on welfare that are uneducated, they're unskilled, and providing for them, putting up in hotels, that's money. I'm just going to give you on a personal level here. I just found out today that there's a lady who's living on disability. She can't afford her home. Her daughter had to purchase a home, a very moderate home, nothing too fancy. It needs a new roof. It needs a paint job. It needs some upkeep. The daughter can't keep it, and she doesn't have a husband, and this woman, she doesn't know where she's going to go because her daughter can't keep the house because of the upkeep, But, it turns my stomach when I see what Trudeau and Sheeran, these other politicians are doing, bringing in migrants and looking after them as if they're something special to our country.
Yeah. It's really obscene, Greg.
We don't need migrants. When a politician says to you, and remember, when I say this, don't forget this. When a politician says to you, what I'm doing for you is good for the country, they are lying. No matter what it is, they're lying to you. When a politician says we need immigration, we don't need immigration. They're saying we don't have enough people to work. They're lying to you. There's plenty of people to work.
You know what they say now? Because a lot of people are questioning the immigration, for example, Greg. You know what they say? Oh, trust us.
Yeah, trust.
Oh, trust us.
If a person says, to be honest with you, or trust us, then you don't trust them.
Exactly. So I ran the numbers on the immigration, Greg. In the federal budget this year, they've allocated $24 billion to administer immigration, refugee citizenship. $24 billion.
And that's all that means is they're going to have more government bureaucracy.
Exactly.
Government is just going to mushroom more.
And that's gone up $1 billion from Harper for that, Greg. Another thing, too, is the new immigrants coming into Canada are taxation negative. And this was a study out of Simon Fraser by the economist there. And it showed that they were consuming a lot more services than taxes paid, to the tune of $35 billion plus a year.
Yeah, Harper did a study as well, and
so that's 59 billion, Greg. That's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
I know. We're on the same page.
Yeah,
there.
It's terrible, isn't it? And then, and that's not even talking about the societal decay of Canada.
Well, Victor,
Victor last night, yeah.
Yeah, you interviewed Victor, and Victor pretty well summed it up in a few words. Victor said that immigrants come to the country. They're coming from these immigrants that are coming into our country. They're coming from a country that they don't pay taxes. They're coming from a socialist-style government into a country that's a democracy. They don't want a democracy, and they want to change the country to the same type of country they live in. They don't want to pay taxes.
Exactly.
You know,
another thing Victor said is that a lot of the people coming in do not share our values.
No, they don't.
And right now, they're pushing down, First Nations are going to be pushed down, Euro-Canadians who founded this country. We're losing the values. As Victor said, as we lose those values, we're going to lose the institutions that make up Canada, everyone.
And it's happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening. This is.
We have mosques in this country right now, and I'm gonna ask you a question. But we have mosques right now that are citing hatred towards Jews. It's death towards Jews. That's what they're citing, and they're not mixing words when they say that. So when people deny that there's an invasion of the Islamic radicals, and they deny that, and when I say they, we're talking liberals, because liberals are uneducated morons. The question I want to ask you is, I just noticed my battery is low, so I'm going to have to just plug in here for a sec. The question I want to ask you is, if there isn't an Islamic invasion, why are Muslims moving to areas like Cape Breton, for instance, in high unemployed, stressed economical areas and building mosques? Where are they getting the money to build a mosque? Why did they float a mosque to Yellowknife, of all places? Who floats a building to Yellowknife? Why?
What about in Fort McMurray, the biggest mosque in North America?
Why?
Why? Saudi money and other money.
Saudi money.
Yeah,
that's right. And
why?
Why though?
Why? Because it's pushing that ideology. That's obvious.
Right. And if I plant a cockroach in every part of my house, I'm eventually going to be overrun by cockroaches.
What are they going to eat?
They'll eat everything.
Government handouts?
Sure they will. You won't find that in my house, but we have a serious problem here in this country.
Yeah.
And taxation is on the top. And I read an article here today where the peasants, and I'm one of those peasants, are starting to recognize that politicians are getting paid too much. We have a serious problem when you have people that are living below the poverty line, earning less than $50,000 or earning $50,000 or $60,000. They're lucky to net $2,400, and from that $2,400 a month, they have to pay all these high taxes to enjoy life, to enjoy a balance in their life. But we have a serious problem when you have politicians that are getting paid $275,000 a year. They're getting $50,000 free tax expenses. Who in this country can make $50,000 and spend it on whatever, and they don't have to show a receipt to Revenue Canada, and they don't have to pay any taxes on it?
Where do they get their money? Is that their income they're spending?
It's an expense that government gives them. So an MP or an MLA, or even on the municipal side, all of those levels of governments are getting subsidized by a bag of money that they don't have to
pay any tax on.
They don't have to pay any tax.
So could that be flights back and forth?
They wouldn't do that because their flights are paid for.
Yeah, so
their offices are paid for, their assistants are paid for, their flights are paid for, their meals are paid for. If they have a house in PEI, they can charge that as a principal residence and get money back on it. We are being ripped off.
So where's that
These
50,000? Is that their vacation?
No. They can put parties on or whatever
parties,
they want.
yeah.
Yeah. So 150 years ago, when a guy rode up to you on a horse and a rifle with a mask on his face, and he robbed you. Now they come to you and they got a suit on, and they rob you, and saying that they have to go to Ottawa to help you.
Yeah. So
we're being robbed blind.
Yeah.
So I like your policy.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put it up here, Greg. I got the numbers, just to give everyone some. Here's the numbers, everyone. So right here, the Prime Minister, he's at 334,800. That's just a base salary, Greg.
And we're not even talking about the pension.
Yeah.
That for every dollar they put in, the taxpayer has to put in $28, and they get to receive their pension after 5 years. Full pension.
Yeah, and then you got the Speaker, which is around 250,000 a year. That's just a base salary.
For wearing out the leather of a seat.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the Speaker do? Jeff Regan is from my hometown in Bedford.
Yes.
Nova Scotia. Jeff Regan has been in Ottawa for 14 years, and he's done absolutely nothing. If I had to put a piece of driftwood in a seat, we would have got the same production out of a piece of driftwood. And he's now the Speaker of the House, making that kind of money.
Yeah.
I mean, Canadians are going to have to wake up.
Yeah, exactly. And the base salary of the MP right now, it's saying 167,400. Then there's all the top ups on that, Greg. If you're in a committee and right.
Yeah.
Right?
Or if you have a portfolio, yeah.
Yeah. So we want to.
So what's your policy?
Our policy is to take it down to the average Canadian, Greg. We don't think public service should be motivated by money.
No.
And we want it reduced. We want the pensions reduced. Trudeau's going to get half a million a year for life after one term.
He's a criminal. I'll tell you. When he was MP, an ordinary MP in the House, he started a speaking engagement company. And the reason he did is so that he can write off a lot of his income against the losses of this speaking company.
Right.
And he was making another extra $480,000 a year on these speaking engagements.
Yes.
To, of all places, he was charging $30,000.
Yes.
For a speaking engagement to schools, to churches, to charities. We were paying him as an MP. This guy is a crook.
Yeah.
And plus he was on the board of directors of some boys' school. I'll never forget this. Harper stopped the funding of it. But he was in Halifax, and he was ordering $400 bottles of wine and a $400 steak. Now, people say $400 steak, Greg. You're exaggerating numbers. But I'll tell you, I've been at the Cut in Halifax, and they tried to sell me this $400 steak, and it's a special cow that they raise in Japan.
Oh my
and
God!
I had to know about this because I'm a guy from Glace Bay who was brought up very poor. So when I hear stuff like that, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
But you know who ordered that $400 steak with the $400 bottle of wine on our money? Trudeau.
Yeah, that's what you said.
And Christian was no different.
Yeah.
Christian, when he was at the G7 in Japan, he was getting his favorite wine shipped from France by the cases, by the way,
wow.
to Japan for all his cronies that were there with him. And each bottle of wine, and I kid you not, was $4,000 a case.
Wow.
And he was having it shipped from France on our money.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, these liberals.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, and don't forget about the $100 million ad scam.
Exactly.
He and Martin were. You know what? I don't understand Canadians. Really don't understand them. Here you got, and I'm going to go all the way back to Pierre Trudeau. Pierre Trudeau got voted in, and he was a card-carrying communist back in the 40s. And he was still a communist in the 60s. And he hated Canada. So him and René Lévesque devised a plan that they were going to destroy Canada. And it wasn't coming together for them. So Pierre Trudeau walked away from René Lévesque, and that's why they became enemies, bitter enemies. And he became a politician in Canada, so he could carry out his mandate to destroy Canada. And he brought it in with social programs and bilingualism, which cost us billions and billions of dollars. Then you brought in Brian Mulroney, who bankrupted 5 companies, and he became Prime Minister of Canada. Now, why would you hire somebody who failed 5 companies? And then you bring in Chrétien, who's married to one of the daughters of the richest families in Canada, the Desmarais family. And he got there not because of intelligence, because he had big money and a big family backing him up. And then you had Paul Martin. Now, I'm going to go all the way back to the 70s. Paul Martin's father was the president of the Liberal Party under Pierre Trudeau. Paul Martin's father bought a company that was a shipping company that was going bankrupt for 10 cents on the dollar. It was cheap. And he put his son, Paul Martin, into it. And what they did is they registered the company in another country, in the Philippines, so that they could never track back the conflict of interest. Now we're going to fast track back to the 90s, and Paul Martin, who has a shipping company that's registered in the Philippines, who survived and became rich on government shipping contracts, registers a company in the Philippines because he doesn't believe in the Canadian corporate tax system, right? And Canadians voted this fool in.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I don't understand Canadians.
Yeah.
Why don't they educate themselves of who is running for? I couldn't believe it. I almost left the country when they voted him as Prime Minister.
Yeah, good. That's a good example. But they're all working together, Greg. So
they're all the same.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And the bottom line, the Canadians are paying way too much on consumer goods, Greg. It's over.
Way too much.
And it's like the taxpayer video show. So many people crossing the border. And
if we don't change government in this country, Donald Trump and the Americans are going to chew us up and spit us out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of our tax system. You cannot have a socialist-style government next to a capitalist-style government. It was fine when Obama, the dummy down there, Obama, was running the country, because he was going left-wing socialist. But that's not going to last forever in a capitalist-style country.
Look at the corporate welfare here, Greg. It's obscene.
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's crony capitalism, everyone to the max.
Why would a company want $200 million or $800 million, like Bombardier, $800 million, Toyota, $220, Toyota of all places.
Yeah, when they're
of all companies, $225 million.
And they're posting revenue $29 billion a year.
Yeah, profit,
$29 billion.
Yeah, I mean, Canadians are going to have to. I guess this discussion was about GST and how much taxes we're paying, but I think it's turned more to, I'm pleading to Canadians that are listening, for God's sake, get yourself educated of what's going on in our country, because the more we are stupid, we are going to lose control of what's going on in government. We need, and I really love your policies, by the way. We need to get control of government by referendums. Is one good
100%.
way. Yeah, and recall of politicians.
Yes,
they're not doing their job. Any politician, including the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Because here's what a lot of Canadians don't understand: the Prime Minister of Canada has more power and leeway than the President of the United States. If the Prime Minister tomorrow decides to shoot somebody in the head in front of everybody, in front of thousands of people, he can walk into that house tomorrow and pass a bill saying that if any Prime Minister were ever shoot anybody in the head, he can't be prosecuted. And that's on all levels of government. And I'll explain to you why I say that. There's no such thing as impeachment in this country, and there's no such thing as recall. And we've seen that because Trudeau was in a serious conflict of interest, and what came out of it? He didn't even answer after being asked 20 times if he was cooperating with the ethics commissioner. Nothing happened, and he was in a major conflict of interest by taking presents and gifts from a lobbyist in Canada. with the Canadian government.
Yep. No, excellent point, Greg. And this is something we definitely support. We want the Canadian people, Greg, to have the ability to remove governments like Trudeau before an election through a non-confidence vote, national vote.
I'm going to tell you,
Greg,
how dangerous.
wouldn't that be great?
Well, of course it is, but I'm going to give you an example, a true example, how dangerous our politics are in Canada. John Buchanan was Premier of Nova Scotia, and John Buchanan had the RCMP do an audit on his trust account, and there was $350. This was 1983, by the way. There was $350,000 in his trust account, that political trust account, that he couldn't account for. So, if you can't account for it, it's considered laundering money. So the RCMP did a major investigation on him. In April of 1983, John Buchanan went into the House as Premier of Nova Scotia and had a bill introduced that if any Premier were to resign prior to any criminal charges, that the criminal charges cannot be retroactive. Now, what that means, for the viewers that don't understand the legal jargon, that means that once that bill got passed, whatever John Buchanan did and criminal charges were laid against him, he could never go to jail. So in July of 1983, the RCMP walked up to his door with the warrant to arrest him for criminal actions, and his lawyer was there to pass him the bill saying the charges can't be retroactive because he resigned. Now, to make matters worse, guess who put him in the House as a senator right after that? Because he was no longer Premier of the province, right? He didn't have a job. Guess who put him in as senator? Brian Mulroney.
Wow, unbelievable.
Birds of a feather flock together.
Unbelievable.
And,
unbelievable.
You know, Trump to me is a savior of politics for center to right capitalism, because not only is he waking up the dead in the United States, and he's upsetting the left to where they've gone insane. I think what he should do is build an asylum next to the wall and put all the left-wingers in there so they can look at the wall for the rest of their life, because they've absolutely lost their mind.
It's also the globalists too, Greg.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's the globalists.
Yeah.
Because we have it right here in this country.
We do.
And it's never been exposed.
Yeah.
You are exposing it. I'm exposing it. And our followers are exposing it.
So and something we got to double down on, Greg, and people got to understand this. Trump's being vilified in our corporate media, in the mainstream media, by the government. But remember, everyone, remember, he is doing his job. He's putting his people, his country first.
That's right.
You got to understand that.
He's a businessman.
You also got to remember there's a protectionism racket in Canada. And that's why our consumer prices are so high compared to the US. Understand that. And it's like we were discussing today, Greg, 270% on milk. 300% tariff.
Yeah, we're keeping the dairy farmers
rich
in business, and they have no competition.
Yeah.
So, we're paying $8 for a jug of milk.
That's killing competition. So it's only hurting you at home. That's causing your prices to be very high of your basic necessities.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about free trade, and they talk about global trading and everything. They're lying to the people.
They are.
We can't get cheap American milk up here at $3 a jug of milk. I'm talking like the big jug.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to talk about beer, but I mean, if you go to Costco in South Carolina, you can buy a 36 case of beer at $12.99. Well, it's $59.
$59.
$59.
And what about vehicles?
Same with
Brand
the vehicles.
Brand new cars are like they're like more than half the price in many cases.
Yeah, and what's happening because of the tax system, just to kind of narrow it down, is the less money we have, the more money we're giving to government, is less money we have to save for retirement. And the Americans are now ahead of us in their retirement because they're not paying as much taxes. They're paying, and I'm talking combined taxes here when I talk taxes. I'm not just talking payroll taxes, because you heard us. We had a discussion on the CPP. That's just another tax, and it's a 9% taxes. So when you start taking a look at the fuel taxes, CPP at 10%, 9.9%, it's 10%. Then you have the HST at 5%. These are all combined taxes on already top of our 43 or 45%, depending on what province you're in. So the Americans are paying half of that. So the last numbers I worked on was Americans are going home with 54 cents on every dollar they earn, and Canadians, after they paid combined taxes, are going home with 11 cents on every dollar that they earn. I mean, that's absolutely disgusting. But the people keep voting these globalist governments in, and they don't do anything about the tax system.
How do you get ahead?
Because you got to vote for the NCA.
Yeah.
You've got to donate to the NCA because it takes money to get to Ottawa. And when the NCA gets to Ottawa, I've read your policies that you're going to reduce wages by 50%. And nobody needs $275,000 to live on when they're sitting on their butt, and they have their offices paid for and their assistants, and they're being driven around, And
plus the pensions too. We're going to reduce them down to the average Canadian.
That's right.
You're not going to come out and what are they getting? Like Trudeau's getting half $500,000 a year for life, everyone after one term.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous, Greg. We want them down to the average Canadian. We're looking at 50,000 for the average MP.
We got to kick the royalty out of Ottawa is what we have to do.
Exactly.
Trump's getting rid of the swamp gutters.
Yes.
We got to kick the royalty out.
We do.
Our country hasn't changed since 1867. The royalty came over here. This is what we have as a Senate. Is they were what's the word I'm looking for? The elite of Scotland and of England, and they wanted to be in the Senate to control the government, and this is where our Senate has come from, and that's all it is. We're looking at hundreds of years later, and we have a Senate that is absolutely a waste of Canadian taxpayers' dollars. So we got to get a Senate that they're elected and they're going to work for the people.
Exactly.
Hopefully they're going to work for the people.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent points here, Greg. I'm just going to touch on a couple other issues, Greg, before we close this up. You talked about CPP. Well, that tax is going to be increasing next year, Greg. They're adding on an extra $2,200. $2,200 on top.
Yeah, so a wage earner of $54,000 is going to pay over $5,100. Well, the employer is going to chip in 50% of that, but it's not fair that the employer does. I think a contribution, as I talked about, a contribution of a pension, get rid of the CPP, turn it into a locked-in LIRA, a locked-in RSP, or locked-in retirement account, and have it income tax deductible at the highest tax bracket. And that would give any Canadian a good, sizable pension of an average of $24,000 a year, and then have it passed on to their family, so that we can make Canadians rich at the end of the day, that they're going to have millions of dollars over a period of decades and being passed down.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great, everyone? And that's the way it should be. We are a wealthy country on the paper, but we're not. Almost a quarter of our population are living in poverty, are living in economic jeopardy right now.
I'll put it to you this way.
It's wrong, Greg.
Yeah, I'll put it to you this way. If our government was a company, and I was hired as CEO to come in and take a look at the company to make it profitable, there'd be 50% of the people gone the very first week. That's how bad.
Yeah, exactly.
It's being run backwards.
It is.
And it's very wasteful. I mean, look how wasteful CBC is. Yeah. $1.6 billion a year of taxpayers' money. And they sent a crew of 35 people to Algiers to do reporting on it. What? We don't have to know what's going on in Algiers. Why would they send 35 people over there?
Exactly. So that's something we want to sell off.
That's another waste.
Yeah, we got to sell that off. And like I said, if you support the CBC, use your own money. Don't rely on the Canadian taxpayers. Right?
Well, the aliens will come down here 300 years from now, and they'll be looking at the CBC, and they'll say, oh, that's the machine they use to brainwash people. Because that's all CBC is.
Yeah. But those other networks aren't much better, are they?
Well, I would say to the listeners, start watching The Rebel. Ezra Levant, Sheila Gunn.
Well, you got to get them to cover us. They don't want to cover us, Greg.
Well, I'll
we got to work on them, but that's our only issue with them. Like, why weren't they covering our Dartmouth rally? That's right in their wheelhouse.
Well, like us, they don't have a lot of money to travel.
Well, he's traveling all over.
Yeah, but he's doing it on donations.
Oh, is he?
So,
okay, we'll see. It's not a big deal to us. Another thing we should touch on, Greg.
Well, it is a big deal because really the Taxpayer Association should be talking to us. The Fraser Institute should be talking to us. Ezra Levant should be talking to us for sure.
Yeah, and we're getting information from the taxpayers and the Fraser Institute.
And if CBC is not a true liberal media source, they should be talking to us as well.
Yeah. So, well, they will. We'll have to see, Greg. What about this? We were talking this week with Roger. I told you about Roger, our member from South Calgary. So we did a few things on Trudeau's, shifting the public lending rate to the central banksters.
Yeah.
And now they're printing our money. Can you believe it, Greg? And charging compound interest on our money. Greg?
They started that in the 70s. Though.
I know that. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah.
Did you know, I read this, it was through the Fraser Institute, that nationally we're paying over now $64 billion in our money to these central banksters.
Yeah.
In debt service payments. But none of these people in Ottawa want to talk about it. That's $64 billion a year, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to 1972, the Bank of Canada would issue money at 0% interest, Greg.
Well, it's
that's troubling, isn't it?
Yeah, like Roger said. I don't know if he said it, but because I watched it a week ago. But
sure.
When Trudeau got in bed with the banks, that was the downfall.
Yeah.
And he started borrowing money from France and Germany. That was the downfall of our country.
Well, you can see the debt.
There was no debt. There was no debt prior to Trudeau.
There was no debt.
Yeah.
And that's when it just took off.
Our dollar was stronger than the American dollar before Trudeau got in.
Yeah, and I should put this in context, everyone, because we're talking about taxation. Prior to 1913, there was no personal income tax. There was just some corporate tax. And look how it's grown from there, Greg. Now there's tax on tax. There's all kinds of hidden tax. And
in 1913, there was no socialism.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, 1950, there were no socialism. Yeah. Socialism didn't start to come into being until the Liberals get in power in the 60s, mid-60s.
Wow, it's unbelievable.
And that's when... And CPP is just another social program that the Liberals brought in.
Yeah. And that's...
The idea, in theory, it was good.
Yeah.
But they didn't do anything about it but turn it into a social program.
Yeah, it's terrible now. And there's no way the government should be running that. And you sent me some numbers. I think it's going... Next year, I think by 2020, the value of CPP is going to be like $457 billion of your money.
Yeah, taxpayers' money.
Can you believe that, Greg?
Yeah, and when you and I pass on, our wives will get 50% of it, and when our wives pass on, the government gets to keep it. But the government hasn't put a dime, has never put a dime into CPP.
Wow.
So why are they keeping it?
Wow, unbelievable. Canadians got to wake up. Yeah, because that's this doesn't have to be. I think there's a lot of Canadians that realize that, on paper we're a wealthy country and we should all be living, most of us at least, should be living decent lives, and not be pushed down with all this credit card debt, living paycheck to paycheck, Greg. And this country is completely mismanaged. And then we bring in, Greg, the mass immigration on top of it. It's kind of...
Because they need votes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
That's all it's all about.
So share this. Go ahead, Greg.
I want to ask the listeners a favor. Go to the NCA site and donate. We need money to get our voice out. Also, I want all the listeners to make a commitment that they'll tell at least 5 people about the NCA and get them to start listening to our message. Our message is very important. It's about you. It's not about us. And I think it's very important that you start to spread the word.
Yeah, exactly. And for those supporters, members out there who are spreading the word, and we want to thank you for doing that, because you are out there. And I'll give you an example. I got a call from a Reverend Bruce from Sydney, Nova Scotia, last week, everyone. And he never heard of us, Greg, but it was the delivery guy coming in. He goes, have you heard of the NCA? And it led to him looking into us and signing up. And that's how the power of the word, everyone. So I'm just Greg and I and our other members, Adrian, who led the Dartmouth rally, we're organizing our convention coming up as well, everyone. So
I'll be back in 1 second.
Yeah, so we're organizing our convention, so we'll be putting an announcement about the convention coming up. And so it's going to be probably early November, and we're planning to have it outside of Halifax, but we will be putting out notice of the convention, and we're going to have some great speakers there, and our members are going to be voting on certain issues as well. Another thing too, I will be releasing a GoFundMe tomorrow. Everyone, Greg? So, Greg, I was just mentioning about the convention that we're going to be releasing a date soon. We're just finalizing the venue, everyone. But tomorrow I'm going to be releasing a GoFundMe. So we have one of our members south of Calgary, and on his private property, he's offered to allow us to put up a 44-foot billboard sign at the NCA along the major highway. So the cost of that sign is $1,300. So we're going to be doing a GoFundMe to raise the funds. So even if you have $10, $20, put it towards that, and that's where your money will go to. And it's going to be a massive sign, and so look for that tomorrow. I'm going to be posting that tomorrow. And do you have any final words, Greg?
Yeah, I do. I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, is for all the listeners to approach 5 people and ask them to listen to us. You know, like the old hair shampoo commercial. You know, one person tells one person, another person tells 2 people. You know, the one thing that Toyota did back in the 70s or 80s, they did a study on bad publicity, and they found that if one person is not happy with the corporation, they tell 12 people. But if something good comes out of it, they only tell 1 person.
Wow. So
I want to change that and tell as many people as you can, because the more followers we have, we can get people to donate, and the more ears that are listening, we're just going to educate more Canadians to what's really going on in Ottawa. And you know, an avalanche starts with one little tiny snowflake, and that's where we are right now. But you are the one that can change this into an avalanche.
Yeah, it's got 100%. It's got to come from you, the Canadian people. The NCA is just a vehicle. That's all we are, just a mere vehicle. And this is everything to do with you, the Canadian people. And like Greg said, you know, talk to your neighbor. You could send someone our website. You could contact someone on Facebook or give someone a call, whatever way you can. This is powerful, everyone. Word of mouth. And I gave you that example of the Reverend who never heard about us. And it was just the guy coming in there. He was all excited, and he told him about us. And it led me to having a call with him. And guess what? There's a good chance that Reverend will be speaking at our convention outside of Halifax. So, isn't that great? And he's fully on board. Greg, he's fully on board. He is absolutely disgusted at what's happening to our country. Absolutely disgusted. So, like I said, Greg may not want to wish you a happy long weekend, but I will. So I
will. I want you to have a nice long weekend.
Yeah, I want to wish everyone.
I just say, I didn't mean that I want to ruin your weekend, but the information we gave you, we probably after you think about it for a while, it just very well may ruin your weekend.
Well, it should. I take the reverse, because I think it should empower you. It should put a smile on your face and give you a sense of hope that we're actually, because to bring true change like we're talking about, we got to identify the problems. And then when you identify the
problems, which we have.
Yes. And then the next step is the solutions. So we've done a lot of that tonight, everyone. So this should bring a smile to your face. And you should feel good that there's Canadians like Greg and I who are so concerned that we're using our free time to do this. We're not getting paid, everyone.
No.
This is our time, because it shows that we care. We care about you, the Canadian people. That's why we're doing it. I'm not getting paid. Greg's not getting paid.
No, we're not two people that are complaining. We belong to a party that will go to Ottawa and make a change.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, but we can't do it with one person.
No.
In Ottawa. We can't do it with two people. We've got to get a lot of people there. And the only way we're going to do it is we have to have the money to advertise.
Exactly, everyone.
So you've got to be at the table during the debates. You've got to be at the national debates. Ezra Levant said something there on the weekend. He said when they broke ties with the Sun, they had very little followers. They have more viewers than the national at CBC right now.
Wow, amazing.
So they started out as a snowflake.
A small snowflake. Exactly, everyone.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. We're really looking forward to the convention, everyone. It's going to be exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it, because what we're going to do is have a one-day convention. We got some internal business to do. We got some voting by our members, and then we're going to be we got our speakers. We got some great speakers, including Greg and myself will be there, and then the next day, everyone, we're doing an outdoor rally, a big outdoor rally, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So
and we're not going to be like the other parties that are charging $500. We're only charging $25. So we're going to RSVP it. So sign up to make sure that we don't want the convention room to be full. If we end up getting thousands, we're going to have to get a bigger venue.
Exactly. So we're going to be pushing that. Also, as I mentioned, tomorrow we're going to be releasing a GoFundMe, and this is an opportunity to help us get our name out. One of our members, a great man, has offered to use his private property. He already has the structure in place for a 44-foot by 8-foot.
That's going to get a lot of attention.
Huge billboard on a major highway where there's at least 30,000 commuters coming by it every day, everyone. So we just want people, like, if you support us, that's a great opportunity to show you where your money's going to go. It's going to go into paying for that sign. So that'll get great attention for us. I mean, we are billing. We are, compared to just a month ago, we're billing really fast. Oh, yeah.
So the word is getting out. The common sense Canadian taxpayer are seeing the common sense of our message.
Yeah, and definitely. I got some feedback, and people love our economic policies, Greg. The people that look at them, it's just common sense. It's common sense. Yeah, this racket has to end, everyone. And so we're going to end it there, and we want to thank you for listening in. Please share this message, and we'll have Greg back on soon. And God bless you. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe, everyone.
So you're going hunting next week for elk?
Yeah, well, that's a personal thing, Greg.
Without me.
That's a personal thing.
Yeah, so that's fine. You know, the viewers have to know you're a normal person.
Yeah.
You know, you're a dad and a normal guy, but you're going hunting without me, so it's not going to be the same.
With a bow. With a bow.
With a bow and arrow, yeah. And I want you to. I wish you the best.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And that's just a personal thing, everyone. I love wildlife. We have a great wildlife policy, and this is just it's part of being Canadian. This lifestyle, and it's just the way it is. And you know, I'm not going to get into debate over hunting, but you know, end of the day, you have to eat, Greg. So.
Yeah, and when I come to Alberta in October, I'll be looking for a nice thick steak.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. You know, you take what you're given. You know that with hunting. Yeah. It's kind of, you know, you got skill and talent, but there's limits, right?
Well, you know, our belief is the animal comes to you and sacrifices itself.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Greg. So I'm sure, I look forward to seeing you in October, and I'll see you at the convention as well. So that's going to be exciting. So everyone, have a great long weekend, and we look forward to connecting with you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, excellent stuff, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.